Here's what's new this month with Passport.
Help! It's been a terrible mistake.
So close to cracking the case.
What's your next move? Leave it to me, please.
These and all your favorite shows are available with Passport. Support your PBS station and stream more with Passport.
Good evening and welcome to the Expressions Digital Director's Cut with Chris McCarthy. I'm Andy Piak, the show's producer, and I'm broadcasting live from WSKG Television Production Control. And over the next hour, we are going to take you behind the scenes of his recent Expressions episode. Now, we're going to learn more about this up-and-coming big city jazz artist, and in the Thanksgiving tradition, we'll even serve up some leftover performances that didn't make the broadcast. Now, if you missed the Chris McCarthy Trio's recent Expressions performance, you can check it out by visiting wskg.org/expressions. And a link to the program will be posted in the chat box at the conclusion of this event. Now, you can also use this chat box to ask a question about the Expressions program or to Chris, and we'll do our best to answer it in the next hour. Okay, I think I have soloed enough. Let's bring Chris into the stream. Chris McCarthy, welcome to the Expressions Digital Director's Cut.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
No problem. Why don't you let the audience, where are you streaming from this evening, my good man?
I'm coming to you from Brooklyn, New York, my apartment, Lefferts Gardens, to be specific.
I want to say, I think you are the first Expressions Digital Director's Cut guest to actually not be from one of our 21 county viewing areas. So I appreciate you. You're turning Expressions from a local arts program into a regional arts show. So I can't thank you enough for joining us, and of course for your great Expressions performance. Your episode premiered probably about 10 days ago. And it was in the works for probably 2 or 3 years. I want to say we were talking about you coming up to Binghamton to perform even before COVID, if that's correct.
Yeah, I think originally I was going to come in June 2020, which didn't work for obvious reasons.
And then even afterward, I think we were gonna have you up, and I think we're going to have you perform maybe without an audience, because obviously, there was, when we were still trying to do stuff, but not having an audience. I think I'm glad that we waited until, we could actually bring an audience in, as we're going to show you, as I mentioned, we're going to show you some extra cuts later on in this hour. And I definitely am happy that you're able to perform in front of an audience. Can you kind of talk about like what it's like to get back into performing in front of an audience after all that time? Obviously that you weren't able to do that with COVID.
Yeah, it's a joy to be back to performing normally again. And it puts into perspective how out of my element I really was for 2 years, because I was used to playing most nights of the week with different bands and different styles, and to suddenly only be playing from my apartment was a shock for sure. So it's really been great to get back to that the past year and a half, I suppose.
I would really think musicians would miss that instant, recognition of applause at the end of a performance that you probably can't really quite get when you're just kind of performing in your own apartment. How long did you prepare? I know, so you appeared on the Expression show as a trio with bassist Alex Tremblay and drummer Stephen Kramer, and you guys put on a great performance. I'm a little curious. I want to say that we'd scheduled that. I mean, we definitely knew you were going to come up for this one for probably a few months. I'm curious how what your preparation was in advance for the television program.
So Steven, the drummer, and I have been playing together a lot the past couple of years. We live down the street from each other pretty much. So I would say our preparation for the event was just coming out of a lot of experience playing together. Even if we weren't playing the exact same program, I became more and more familiar with his drumming and approach to the music. And at the end of the day, that's what's most important, is just being familiar with who you're playing with rather than what you're playing, unless when you're playing jazz. And the same thing for Alex Tremblay, the bassist. We had a weekly gig at a wine bar in Williamsburg for 3 years. This was 2017 to 2020, pretty much. But I play with Alex's band a lot also. And so even if we haven't played as a trio a lot, I have a bunch of hours with both of them in different contexts. And that's the most important element to putting a trio together, I think, is just familiarity with the musicians and how they're going to approach things.
Yeah, we'll get into the nuts and bolts of jazz music and writing for jazz a little bit later, because I imagine it's quite different than say pop music or a different type of genre. But I am curious how you could compare the performance here at WSKG to the clubs you perform at down in Brooklyn and in the city. What was the major difference?
Overall, it felt pretty similar, to be honest. I mean, the audience was very attentive. I mean, they have to be for TV, I suppose, but it sort of felt like playing at a jazz festival, to be honest. It was a similar sort of listening room vibe with everybody focused on the band, and which is always great for the performers to have that energy to feed off of. And that's not always the case playing in a jazz club in the city. Sometimes people are talking over you more than you would like, which doesn't, I don't necessarily hate that all the time. Depends on the context, but to have that full attention of the audience at WSKG was really great.
I can only imagine the amount of times you probably wanted to shush audience members from the stage, and have probably thought better about it over the years.
That I have plenty of stories of bad audience etiquette, but we don't.
Well, and I will say I have plenty of bad stories where our audience was not quite as respectful of the audience. Like, you should have seen our polka audience back in the day when we recorded our regular polka program. Those crowds could get out of hand in quite a hurry. So, well, let's talk a little bit about your background, Chris. When did you first become interested in jazz? What first drew you to jazz?
Yeah, so I grew up in the Seattle area, and I went to a high school called Roosevelt High School that is known for having a great jazz program. And when I started high school, I was already playing piano, but didn't really know anything about jazz. But I was blown away by the level of musicianship I was hearing by people, a few years older than I was, in this big band at the high school I was going to. So that was my first inspiration to really start practicing seriously, and to study jazz as an art form. And then throughout high school, like I was in that big band for my whole high school experience. And some of those people in that band I still play with to this day, and we're still in New York together, collaborating. So having that exposure to high level jazz in high school was really valuable. And in retrospect, I definitely appreciate it more because a lot of people did not have that same exposure that young.
That is really neat that you're still playing with people that you attended high school with, especially considering that it's across the country from where you are now. That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
But you did end up attending college out here on the East Coast, correct?
Yeah, I went to New England Conservatory in Boston for my undergrad degree, and I moved to New York right after that in 2016, and I've been here ever since.
Was that your kind of goal, like when you first started, really getting into jazz in high school, even though you were out on the West Coast? Was it always kind of your goal to make it out here in New York City?
Yeah, definitely on some level. The Seattle band would visit New York every year for this competition at Lincoln Center, essentially Ellington, and those were the first times I ever went to New York, and I was pretty blown away by the city from the first time I visited, and I didn't know how I was going to move here, but I felt that if I wanted to play this music, then it was probably the place to be. So,
well, what led you to make that decision to become a professional musician? That's got to be a really hard choice, and I'm sure it's always probably constantly a struggle. But what really went into that?
I don't think there's a specific moment you can point to, like, oh, today I'm going to decide to be a professional musician.
For sure.
It's more like I kept getting experience playing, and discovering just how deep you can go with studying this music and trying to get better at it. And I think the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know anything. And that's kind of been my inspiration this whole time, is to just keep learning about this music that I love so much, and to contribute to it in a productive way.
Well, do you have any what were your major influences growing up? Do you have any of the the old time jazz? I know you covered quite a few songs, or a few songs in the set here on Expressions. I think Bud Powell and Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie, I think, are those some of your favorites?
Definitely, yeah. Those are the bebop greats that any self-respecting jazz musician will sing the praises of. And as I get older, they just keep getting better. They keep sounding better to my ears, and there's something very timeless about that music, even if I'm not always playing exactly like they would, or aesthetically exactly in the same vein. The level of artistry that they set the bar for, we're all still trying to reach.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, like, you constantly listen to it and you just they get better, even though you've listened to them over and over again. I mean, that's always, like, whether it's jazz or any type of music that I listen to, that's kind of how I, like, okay, I've listened to this song over and over again, and it just keeps getting better. And I definitely felt that way with your songs. I mean, I will admit that I'm not like a huge jazz nerd. Probably most of my exposure has been to the episodes that I've produced here on Expressions, and I was really impressed with how, like, I could hear the song for the first time and I'm like, well, that sounds a little scattered or whatnot. And then by like the third or fourth time, like I'm bebopping, with my 2-year-old daughter, to the music, because, like the melody is kind of stuck in my head. So, I mean, you should definitely, I'm sure you're not going to say you're in the same range as like a Charlie Parker, but you guys definitely kind of tapped into that same vein, in that each time you listen to the song, you kind of hear something different, and it just kept getting better. So take that for what you will. But let's take a look at the Charlie Parker song that the trio played on Expressions. We're going to have Alyssa roll Relaxin' at the Camarillo, and when we come back, we're going to talk with Chris McCarthy a little bit more. Chris McCarthy Trio performing Charlie Parker's Relaxin' at the Camarillo. And don't forget, everybody, this program is interactive, so feel free to ask Chris a question in the chat box, and we will do our best to get it answered. Wow, so that's just such a cool performance. Like, there's so much, like the one of my favorite parts about jazz music is the way you guys like kind of communicate with each other on stage, which is, definitely different than than like when you see like a pop or a rock band, like you just constantly notice like the little head nods and all that. Can you kind of talk about like what it's like to communicate when you're up there performing?
Sure. So that tune, "Relaxing at the Camarillo," is a 12-bar blues. What's one of the most common song forms in jazz. So all three of us have played a blues a million times. And we have our collective shared experience of playing this form that we're kind of drawing on as we're playing it. So before we started playing, I don't think I told them anything besides we're going to do this intro and this outro, and the rest is really in the moment. We are just cycling the same form over and over. That's how we have form to the improvisation. But the music is going to be different every time. That's the nature of what we do. But there's a certain natural logic to how we interact and how things progress. Like, the typical thing is to have piano solo, bass solo, and then trade fours or trade with the drummer. In this case, Steven just took a full solo of his own. But we're really just all trying to draw from the great recordings and people that came before us in this music that we've listened to and learned from. And that informs every decision we're making in the moment about who's gonna solo next, what sort of rhythm we might catch together, things like that.
That's I had no idea that there so much of the song was pretty much freeform outside of like what you said, just like the beginning and the end. Have you ever like played with any jazz musicians who like just like don't pay attention to your head nods, and they just like solo endlessly or don't cycle back to
yeah, definitely. This music is a conversation, and a one-way conversation is never very fun. So I've definitely been in that situation before.
Certainly not with Alex and Steven, I'm sure, but
no, they're great. They know just how to make me sound good and support the band sound as a whole.
Well, I mean, you briefly mentioned it, but yeah, the fact that like every time you guys perform this song, like it's not going to sound the same. Like that's always something that I've kind of appreciated about jazz music, is how it's kind of like an empty canvas every time you guys take the stage. That's probably got to be one reason why you guys are so drawn to it, I would imagine.
Yeah, definitely. And you can always reinvent what you did last time and try to make it better than what you did before. That's the goal.
How often do you guys like kind of go back and like when you rehearse, like do you record yourself and kind of play back, or do you kind of just like kind of chat like can you give me a little into your process there?
I'm often making a voice memo on my phone of a rehearsal or a gig. I'm probably not going to listen back to it in the rehearsal.
Mm-hmm.
Because if something goes wrong in the moment, I can usually tell. And then, if we'd have to rehearse a certain section, we'll do that in that moment until it sounds good. But if you're too close to your own work, like right after you've produced it, then it's hard to be objective about it, I think. So I try to put a little distance between myself and recordings of myself, because I mean, ultimately, once you play it, it's gone. The music has already happened. So there's only so much you can do, and it's hard, and it's easy to get stuck in a loop of like trying to sound better than the last time you played, but that's not always constructive, if you know what I mean.
I can certainly appreciate that as like editing these programs together, and you get hung up on like just a few seconds of like one song. And yeah, sometimes you just got to kind of let it go, because when the audience sees it, they probably won't even notice the like the 5 seconds of video, or in your case, the 5 seconds of like piano soloing that you were getting hung up on. Sometimes you just got to let it go out into the ether.
Yes, exactly.
Well, let's talk about your bassist, Alex. Actually released a new album back in October, and you guys actually played 2 of his songs that are going to be on his record, Thoughts and Images, and one of them did make the program, but I think we're going to roll another extra cut right now, and this one is Alex Tremblay's original song, Hymn for the Early Departed. Let's take a look at that right now. The Chris McCarthy Trio performing an original song from bassist Alex Tremblay on the Expressions Digital Director's Cut. We do have some links in the chat box where you can find out more information about Alex, including where you can purchase his new record, Thoughts and Images, where that song appears. I love the crescendo on that one, just like the slow, steady build into like the last minute of just kind of controlled jazz chaos, if you will. So on a song like that, like Alex obviously like writes the bass parts. Now, does he, and this kind of, I guess, goes the same for you when you write your jazz songs, you write, I'm sure, mostly piano. Now, do you write out the parts for the other instruments, or do you kind of just let them kind of figure it out? Like, and I don't know if you can, and I'm sure it might change obviously from musician to musician, but just a little curious about that.
Yeah. So in the case of this song, Alex wrote the whole thing. With any song, basically you have the bass line, the melody, and the harmony is the filling in that sandwich of the bass line and melody. And usually when you have a jazz composer writing a song, they're going to write all those elements together. And then it's the ensemble's job to split up the roles between the instruments. So Alex is playing the roots of the chord and holding down the bass line, and I'm playing the melody and the harmony. But we really have just a pretty simple lead sheet that we're going off of. If I know the melody and the bass line and the general harmony that Alex is going for, then I'm free to make a lot of creative decisions myself about what chord voicing is going to work best, or where I should place a certain rhythm so that it'll lay the best. And the drummers I like to play with, usually I like to tell them as little as possible and trust their instincts. Because I'm not a drummer, and I don't, I know what I like in a drummer, but I don't always know how to articulate it necessarily. So I try to play with people that I know can interpret a chart as if they're another instrumentalist. And that's one thing I really like about Steven's playing, is that he's always considering the melody and harmony of the song he's playing, even as a drummer.
Yeah, you could tell that like all three of you are very accomplished musicians. I think I saw, like, when I was just, kind of surfing along, I see like Steven like provides drum lessons too. So like all of you guys are, obviously just top notch in your fields, which obviously made for a great performance. Chris, why don't we talk about to your albums a little bit? You've released, I believe, 3 studio records up to this point.
Just 2, but under my name, that is. But I have a 3rd one coming out next year. Release date to be determined, but it's a piano trio project, much like what you're hearing tonight. With the same drummer, Steven, and Chris Tordini is the bassist on the record. And that's going to be all original stuff of mine.
How long have you been working on that? Have you been studiously marking time in the studio, or has it been more of a recent endeavor?
So usually with jazz records, they're usually made in a day or 2. This particular one we made in a day. The mixing and mastering, album artwork, all that takes much longer. We recorded in May, and
how many songs, Chris?
8 songs.
8 songs. So you just record them all in one day, and go for how many takes do you think you did of each tune?
At most 4 takes.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you feel at the end of that day? That must have been like really stressful and exhausting, trying to get everything done in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, it definitely could have been more stressful with a different band, but I got those two players because I just trust their playing so much, and they're the kind of guys where you can put any piece of music in front of them and they'll read it perfectly on the first try, which is not always the case, even in New York. So it's a real luxury to have guys like that on the record that could make anything I threw at them sound great.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I would imagine jazz music, out of all the genres, like you have to have complete faith in your fellow musicians, or it could definitely go askew. Much like a TV production, when with my camera operators and audio people, you all have to be on the same page, or who knows what the program might look like.
Yeah, exactly. That's all it is at the end of the day, is who you're playing with. You're only as good as your weakest link. So.
Well, we do have one more leftover as I continue to beat the Thanksgiving puns straight into the ground. And this is a Chris McCarthy original that did not make the broadcast version, but this is a performance of No, Not Yet. So let's roll that right now, and we'll be back to wrap it up with Chris. No, not yet. Chris McCarthy original being performed by the trio with his name here on the Expressions Digital Director's Cut. Now we're about to wrap things up. Chris, you already let us know that you have an album coming out in 2023. I'm curious if you can let if any of our viewers or streamers are interested in attending a jazz show. Can you give us the location of some of your favorite haunts where you play?
Sure. I play around New York City and a bunch of different venues, but some of my favorites are Bar Bayou, which is just up the street from me, Mesro in the West Village, and Smalls, their partner club. Lunatico is a great music venue in Bed-Stuy. Yeah.
How many nights a week? How many nights a week do you usually perform live?
I'd say at least 5. Sometimes it's 7. Sometimes there's multiple gigs in a day and ends up being like 10 gigs in a week. But sometimes it's 3 gigs. It always depends. But recently it's been pretty busy, so that's a pleasure.
And we'll put these links in the chat, but you can visit Chris's Bandcamp page for more information about his records. You can follow him on Instagram at It's Chris McCarthy. Is that probably is the Instagram maybe the best way for the people to get updates on your gigs and the new record?
Yeah, I post about gigs most frequently there.
Cool. So that's Instagram at It's Chris McCarthy. Well, we can't leave this week, Chris, without asking one of the most important questions. What is your favorite Thanksgiving side dish?
Stuffing. Yeah.
Okay. All right. It has been it is my job at the Pioch family for years and years and years. It has been my job to make the stuffing, and I have to admit it's not homemade. It's kind of like right out of the box, but we add some apples to it, so we spice it up a little bit. So I can definitely appreciate stuffing, but definitely looking forward to Thanksgiving this year, and hope you have some great plans, Chris. But I think that's going to wrap up tonight's Expressions Digital Director's Cut. Chris, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thanks for a great Expressions performance, and I really appreciate it. And I hope you have a great Thanksgiving, my friend.
Same to you. Thanks for having me.
All right. And I'm sure we're going to see Chris in the future. And a reminder that you can watch this program featuring the Chris McCarthy Trio by visiting wskg.org/expressions. And a link to that program is being provided in the chat. Now, if you listen to podcasts, then check out the Expressions Director's Cut podcast. This month episode features the complete concert from the Chris McCarthy Trio, all 10 songs that they performed last summer. And you can find this on many of your favorite podcast platforms or at yourpublicradio.org. And again, a link is being shared in the chat for that content. I want to thank Alyssa Micha and Patrick Holmes for their expert behind-the-scenes help this evening. And we will be back next month with a WSKG tradition. That's right, holiday music. You can enjoy classic holiday performances and brand new episodes beginning Friday, December 2nd at 8:30 p.m. on WSKG TV, and of course streaming live at wskg.org. So until then, thanks so much for watching. This is Andy Pioch wishing you a great night and a happy Thanksgiving.